Welcome to my show. I am with a guest here. His name is Henry Woodman. Henry, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing incredibly well. As I usually say, if I get any better, I'll be a walking Mardi Gras.
Yeah, sir.
Thank you.
All right, sir. I want to go to your background first. Firstly, you studied in the University of Arizona and Nova Southern University. You also learned three languages, and you also have a lot of achievements in the media, a lot. I would like to ask, like, what inspired you? What first motivated you to go through this process of media and, the setback challenges and continues to motivate you to keep moving and how you're doing currently now, sir?
Wow. There's a lot of questions. I got to figure out which one was first. So, what inspired me? Well, to be honest with you, I think I would consider myself more of a hedonistic and opportunistic entrepreneur, essentially meaning that I'm generally looking at things that I enjoy or make me happy, right? I don't want to get into something that I'm not going to like, right? And then I would take advantage of an opportunity if I found one. Now, I think I'm much less the person that says, wow, that's a problem. Somebody should do something about it, as opposed to, yeah, that's a problem for me. Let me see if I can do something about it, right? There's a big difference because I hear a lot of people saying, oh man, somebody should come up with something to fix this
Mhm.
problem, right? And if they know how to do it or they have the capacity that they can, it may be a problem for other people as well. And I'll give you an example. When I was in college many decades ago, it was at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and I'm sitting at a laundromat with a pocket full of quarters, and I'm jonesing for my addiction, which was Pac-Man at the time. And I'm thinking, man, this laundromat needs a video game machine. So I go back to my dorm room. I get the yellow pages. Again, this is 40 years ago or something. And I say, do you guys have video games? And they would all say no. And I said, oh, would you like one? Right. And a couple said yes. And I said, because I'll share the revenue with you. And I didn't know it because if you wanted to play a video game at the time, you'd go to the local 7-Eleven, which usually had a couple, or you'd go to a mall that had an arcade with a bunch of machines, right? And nobody cared about laundromat because it wasn't a place you would go to play video games. It was a place you go to wash clothes and watch clothes dry. But people had to be there and they had quarters, which is what it cost for a video game machine. So I took my college money because I didn't have any, and I bought a used machine that was given up at an arcade because they didn't like it. Nobody liked it. And within a couple of months, it paid itself back. And then I got another, and then I got another. So I continued to grow the business with the money I made from the business. And that was kind of the first hedonism because I liked playing video games, and also opportunity because it didn't exist and it's something I did. The problem is I wasn't able to play my own games because then I would take away money from myself if I went into the laundromats when somebody else wanted to play it. So that was the first one. Okay, now, sorry, Timmy, I forgot I forgot all the other questions. What motivates me?
Yes, sir.
I don't know that I can just point and say this is what motivates me. I think it's just part of I fear having to work, as an entrepreneur, I fear having to work for somebody and not having the autonomy, which is kind of hypocritical because there were many times when I was, running a business that I was on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, literally days away from bankruptcy, and I mortgaged my house to pay for business and employees. And I, from time to time, would sit and think, why am I doing this? Why aren't I just working for somebody, collecting a decent paycheck, getting my benefits, and sleeping at night? Because there were a lot of times where I lost sleep, I was stressing, I was all, like the world was coming to an end. So I think the initial motivation was the idea that I can go do the things that I want to do because that's what made me happy. And then eventually, as it got more serious and there was more on the line, it gets kind of scary. And then you think, why don't I just be like everybody else and work a regular job and collect a salary, you know?
All right, sir. That was very inspiring, and those video games were like, wow. I was very happy for that. I would like to go to the area of book. I would like to ask, maybe you've written any book, or you've not thought of writing any book at all, or it's not what you're thinking about, sir.
Yeah, no. Well, I'll continue on. So, I leave college, I go to LA. I want to be I'm thinking I'd love to be a movie director or producer. I want to get into the movie business. And of course, that did not happen. But while I was there, I bought the rights to a book. This is 40 years ago, right? And instead of producing the concept into a movie, I ended up going on travel films. I would travel around for about 10 years, first as a PA and a sound guy, and eventually I worked my way up to producing these travel films. And then I realized, and again with an opportunity, that Chile in Latin America had gone from a dictatorship with Pinochet to a democracy. And as a result, they added new television stations, which needed content. And the country had a young demographic. There were a lot of young people, much like Africa, very young demographic, and they were looking for programming. So I, came in as an American producer, as they say, and pitched an idea for a game show. And within a couple of months, we were producing a game show. So I thought, all right, yeah, let's do that. And so I moved to Chile. I stayed there. I thought I'd only be there for a few months, but I stayed a little bit longer because I fell in love. Eventually, I was introduced to the digital world, and that you can edit much like a Word document. You can cut and paste things around, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Then somebody hands me a CD-ROM, and I put it in the computer, and I look around a room and up and down, and I thought, that's the coolest thing ever. Virtual reality. This is what I want to do. I don't have to travel with a bunch of guys and all this luggage. I can just have one camera and travel around by doing my virtual tours. So I set up a company called World Travel Vision to do virtual tours. Then eventually, hotels would say to me, how do we get these virtual tours on this new World Wide Web thingy? I was like, I don't know. Send them a CD-ROM. Yeah, this is like the mid to late 90s, right? And they said, yeah, they don't know what to do. There are no standards. And I'm like, all right, let me see what I can do to help. Now, I don't know anything about technology, and I didn't then either. And so I said, all right, let's figure out how we can help you distribute your virtual tours. And in investigating that, I realized that part of the problem was more than the virtual tours, which is nice to have. It was the need to have component, which is the photos, right? You need to have pictures on a travel website in order to sell that room, right? But early on, those reservation systems did not have photos. They had the rate and the availability and some cryptic text about, it had parking and air conditioning and things like that. So we decided to pivot again and focus on helping hoteliers collect the photos on their behalf, manage size, tag, categorize, and distribute to every travel site on the planet. So that, after over 2 decades of building that, the company was sold recently. Now, and to answer your question like 20 minutes ago, I'm going back full circle and pun intended, closing the chapter on what I wanted to do then. And now I just published the book, which then we will springboard into developing a TV series based on the concept of the book. The book is called The Reincarnation of Marie, and it's about a guy who finds his soulmate, but his soulmate died 100 years earlier. So he basically falls in love with a dead woman through the writing of her journal. This is based on an actual woman. And then he believes he's found her in a reincarnated form.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And congratulations on the sale. And I would like to ask, because I see you have a lot of background in video games. I would like to, do you consider yourself as someone who really love game, or is just something that you just want to just, make some things from it, sir?
Do I really love games?
Yes.
Well, yeah, at the time I did. I mean, I had calluses on my thumb and forefinger from playing the game so much. So the answer is, yeah. I now, knowing that I have this affinity, or better said, an addiction for these video games, I don't even buy one of these consoles like PlayStation or a Nintendo or something in my house simply because I know I would sit there at nights all night long, neglecting my family, playing video games. So it was a personal addiction. And keep in mind, back in the late 70s, they didn't have personalized smartphones that you can play and do things all day long. I was lucky if I had a Game Boy console, which had, limited things like Tetris.
All right, sir.
So the answer really is I was infatuated and obsessed with the video games. And then I even got into television back in the day from Mattel. And then I decided, you know what, this will ruin my life because I will not do anything that I want to do productive, just sitting around the house playing video games my whole life.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I want to go to the point of your journey to Honduras. I would like to ask, what really inspired you to embark on that type of journey, sir?
My journey on what?
To Honduras.
Udras. I don't know what Udras is. My apologies.
They find the lost city
Oh,
in Honduras.
Honduras.
Yeah, sorry,
Oh,
Honduras.
Honduras. Oh, Udras. Oh,
Honduras.
Honduras. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So Honduras is a country in Central America, and my father had convinced me convinced me, my brother, and a couple friends as 16-year-old and 17-year-old teenagers that we could go on this great adventure in the summer and we would explore and look for a lost city in the jungles. Now, keep in mind, you're young and you don't know what the real world is like, and you're living in the suburbs, and you think, oh, that would be cool. I could go out in the jungles like Indiana Jones and, the Raiders of the Lost Ark and find this great lost city, and I could be on, Johnny Carson, which was the late night show. Nothing could have been further from the truth. It was really a bunch of kids thrown into the jungle and trying to figure out how to survive, between getting fed, between rain, between the guide who my dad had hired to help take us around. He'd never met him. He was a snake hunter. Eventually, we found out he was getting these big snakes and filling them with cocaine because he was a drug dealer. And he threatened to kill us if we found any gold, because that was the idea that the city had this lost golden monkey thing. And so we came back at the end of it with a different appreciation and gratitude for life. One, every drop of water seems much more appreciative, even if there's so much water around, but none to drink or shower in or something like that. Every morsel of food, I mean, we would sit there and dream about eating a burger or anything, right? And comfort. We were wet all the time. There was no shelter. So it was a pretty harsh learning experience, but one you look back on and you say, you know what, it gave you a much better appreciation for life.
All right, so I would like to discuss more on that challenges. What challenges you faced during this expedition, during this journey, sir?
Sure, survival, really. I mean, the first challenge is, we get there and we have this Indian village that welcomes us, and they do a big feast, killing a pig, and we eat like crazy, and then we all get sick. Of course, we're not used to any of that. So once we recover from that, we have to trek into the jungles looking for this area where we believed there was a lost city. The local Indians believed there was, but they wouldn't go. They would only take us so far because they believed anybody who entered the lost city would die a violent death. Now, we didn't really believe that legend, so we go on. But what did happen was we continued on. While we're camping, our guide says, listen, when we're done, if I find any of you has found gold and you're swimming across the river and you can't make it or you're drowning, I will kill you for your gold.
Ooh.
What? Here's 16-year-old kids. We didn't have guns. He did. We only had knives. So here we are plotting how we're going to kill our guide to survive, right? In the case that something like that would ever happen. Now, as we continued to walk, then there were flash floods, and the food that we took with us, the beans and rice, were dragged away in the river. We had to eat monkey and snake and survive on whatever we could. We were always wet, so it was a struggle to survive. And listen, as a 16-year-old kid who's in pretty good shape, it was an eye-opening experience of how the rest of the world is if you're not in your suburban home.
All right, sir. That was very, very serious. I would like to go to the, wildlife. I would like to ask, what is the most memorable? I would like to maybe you had any issue with all these lion, tiger, python, all those. Can you remember any time you had such experience during that journey, sir?
Sure. Well, there are no lions and tigers in the jungle, but there are jaguars. But the jaguars weren't so much a problem because I think they were more afraid of us than we were. The bigger problem was the fer de lance, or what in Spanish is the barba maria, which is it's one of the world's deadliest snakes, right? So you would walk around, and if the fer de lance was hiding behind a rock and you walked by and it bit you, you would be dead within a day, right? So the biggest fear was where you're going and making sure that you don't get bit by a snake. And the particular snake was the fer de lance. And this was the snake that our guide was actually looking for because he would get the big cribos, fill them with cocaine, put them in the bottom of this big old bag that he dragged in, and then a couple of fer de lances on the top. And nobody's going to look in when the world's deadliest snake is slithering around. So we had a lot of respect and fear for the snake portion because we heard the stories of people dying. We knew that we weren't nowhere near a hospital or any treatment, so it was not something that we would have gotten away with easily. Fortunately, nobody was bit by a fer de lance, but that was the big fear, was the snake. The other stuff, worms and flies and bugs, it was annoying and irritating, but it wasn't going to kill you.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. I would just like to ask this, like, do you guys later find that gold there? Like, do you later spot that this is the gold in Honduras? Like,
No, we didn't find the gold. We probably walked on top of the city while we were looking because the jungle had eaten up all the ruins, right? And 40 years later, about 5, 6 years ago, an explorer came and asked us about our journey, and he says we have new technology called lidar, which allows us with this technology to look under the canopy of the jungle and see if there's anything significant there. And they had found what they claimed was the lost city. Now, this, keep in mind, is a very, very inaccessible place. There are no roads, there are no planes, there are no airports. You can't even drop in a helicopter because it's an incredibly dense and wet forest, right? Or jungle. So at the end of the day, if you shoot and you see there's things under there, you're still going to have to find a way to get in, either with, people carrying stuff or mules or what have you, and then to excavate it. So it's a very arduous process. Now, we found a few things. We found some what they called metates, little cooking stones, and a stone owl, which ended up in the Museum of Honduras. They sent a film crew from ABC Sportsman in the US, which was my initial introduction and love of film and TV production. So that's what got me started with, ooh, this is what I want to do. I don't want to sit behind a desk. I want to go out and travel and work creating film.
that was so impressive. I would like to go to the point, that Honduras, that place now, I know it might be connected with local communities. Do you guys receive any support from the local communities when you guys want to enter that lost city?
Yeah, well, we had to. I mean, to go into Honduras, if there's protected areas, I mean, this is a fairly big area. Now, I was 16, so I didn't know the backstory because I was just told by my father, here you go, here's the guys that are gonna, take you in there and, see you in 2 months, right? So I don't know what local authorities in the Honduran government were involved. Once we got to the Indian village, they were aware that we were coming and we brought, chocolates and things. But at the end of the day, I don't believe a lot of people had much information because there was no real good infrastructure there. It wasn't like there were telephone systems, there was no electricity. It was just very rural, and it was a jungle excursion. So, anybody could fly into La Ceiba, which is the biggest city nearby, and then find their way up to the area and go in. Nothing to stop you. Now, the government was interested because if we found some ruins, obviously it's part of the government's taking.
Exactly. So I would like to ask, like, when you guys are in the journey, do you guys ever had any discovery? Do you guys discover something new, something unimaginable?
No, well, I mean, the new was we discovered a lot of metates. We discovered that stone owl that I believe is still in the museum in Honduras. And, that I don't know that you would consider it new. And there, if you travel throughout Central America and Mexico, there are, and Peru for that matter, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ancient sites where civilizations once lived. So there are places that were abandoned that ended up being swallowed by the jungle. I mean, look at Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu was abandoned, and in the 30s, Bingham, I think, founded it by flying over, and you know that's because it was on a mountaintop and there was not a lot of vegetation covering it. But in the other areas in Mexico and Central America, where it's a lot of jungle and vegetation, there's stuff everywhere. I mean, it's like an outdoor museum if you explore. Now, one of the most inaccessible places in the world is the Mosquito Coast in Honduras. And I don't know if I would bestow that on anybody to go in there for a couple of months and look for something if you didn't have proper support. We were young and impressionable and dumb and innocent.
All right, sir. Thank you. And that's what takes me to lessons. What lesson do you think you learned during this journey? Like, what lesson do you know that I really learned things like this? Because I know with that type of journey, you will learn a lot.
Yeah, and keep in mind that was 40 years ago, but no, longer now. That's going to be 60 years, 50 years ago. But the lessons really would be a gratitude for life, a mental fortitude, meaning your thoughts create your life. If you're there and you believe the world is coming to an end, I'm going to die, this is it, then you're pretty much going to have a miserable time. If you believe, this is an obstacle, I'm going to have to overcome it, I'm going to get through this, you will do it then, and then you will continue to do it through life. And that's kind of where the entrepreneurial spirit comes in. Many people go into it thinking, I'm not going to be one of those statistics that, most businesses fail. I'm different, I'm special, I'm good. But the minute things get tough, oof, that gets hard. So having the discipline and having the mental sort of belief that you're going to get through this, you won't die is, I think, played a big part in what I learned.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. And I want to go to the point of your I would like to ask, before going on the journey, do you have any skill that you've gotten through? Maybe like, now all these skills that survival skill. And do you use any of it when you were going, or you didn't even have any skill when you were embarking on the journey?
No, I don't, listen, we're kids living in the United States. The most impressive skill might have been something from the Boy Scouts, where you go in a very contrived thing and you light a fire and you sleep in a tent. It was nothing like that. So what we thought, and we tended to think, okay, so let's prepare for, any medical emergencies. We had bandages and lotions and ointments and all kinds of crap, right? we didn't have a concept of how intense it was going to be, right? We didn't have a concept of how horrible it would be to be wet all the time and your feet shriveled up because you're walking in water with boots and socks that you can't dry. And the fact that you're just miserably tired and starving for hunger. And oh my God, all we ate for the first while was beans and rice. And it took me decades before I could eat beans again, right? So I don't think I was ever prepared. We just didn't know what we were getting into, which I guess in hindsight would have been a good thing because if somebody gave me any idea of what I was about to get into, probably would have stayed home.
That's so true, sir. That's so true. Ah, I want to go to this point of you know that during that time, I think more than 40, 50 years ago now, it was you and your parents. Do you have any plan of you and your kids going on a journey like that again?
Yeah. No, it wasn't me and my parents. It was me and my brother. He's 10 and a
Okay.
half months older than I am. And our friends who are the same age. We were 16 and 17 years old. So dad wasn't even involved. He wasn't that dumb. He knew better. He thought there was a place there, which there was, and he wanted somebody to go look for it. So here, we got nothing to do with you guys. You guys go and I'll get rid of you for the summer. So that was the idea. And so I do like to travel and my daughter is now 18, so I will take her as often as I can to places just because I think if you can do it, traveling is a great way to educate yourself on the world, how other people live, how cultures are and interact, and give you a gratitude for the world that we live in.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. And I would like to go to advice to the general audience. What advice would you give to someone who wants to go on such journey, such dangerous or adventures? Like, what advice can you just give out to someone like that, sir?
Stay home. No, no. Actually, I think the advice really is on an entrepreneurial thing. That journey
Yeah.
was not to make any money. It was just an adventure that we thought, and dad wanted to find something. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, there are really two things. Your mind creates your life, your thoughts create your life, right? So mindset plays a big role, one. Two, surround yourself with people that have similar and like minds, right? Because that saying that you're the average of the five people you hang out with, if you're hanging out with people who don't have a lot of motivation and inspiration, you too will not be inspired or motivated to do anything. If people you hang out with are running a business, they're inspiring you, they're motivated to go to another level, you too will get to that. So, um, focus on who your network of associations and friends are, and they can help elevate you or bring you down. So, it's very obvious to know what you want to do.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And normally there's a question I normally ask from the ancestors, from the forefathers. If there is anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing would be, sir?
I think better communication. I think the world has gotten far too divided with the social media noise and marketing, and we don't come together like we once did. I can be sitting in a neighborhood, and there was a time where I knew all of my neighbors and we'd go out and I'd play with the kids. I don't see that happening now. I think it's a different world where we fear too much. Oh my God, you're going to go out, you're going to hurt yourself. No, I can't let you be alone. And I think those things are wrong because that's how we learn. Scraping our knee, making mistakes, getting hurt, learning from our mistakes is what helps us grow. And I think we're too afraid, especially in this country, not your country, but my country. Everybody's afraid that, oh, we have to protect them from harm. No, you don't. That's part of the growing process. And then they're going to grow up and expect a trophy for just showing up. That's not right.
All right, sir.
That's my
Thank you.
advice. Surround yourself with good people and have a positive mindset. Your thoughts create your life.
All right, sir. Mr. Henry, it was very great having this conversation with you. It was very interesting. I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. This was the second chance. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Bye bye.